Imagine a situation in a country where you get electricity only for 12 hours in a day. Basic necessity like drinking water is not available regularly. Unemployment rate among the youth is as high as 40%. The country is facing the problem of garbage disposal. And to add insult to the injury, the debts on the country is very high. The debts on the country is 152% of their GDP, that is gross domestic production. Which country are we talking about here? We are talking about Lebanon. The GDP of Lebanon is somewhere around 54 to 55 US dollars in billion. And 152% of that, somewhere around 80 billion US dollar, is the debt that is there on Lebanon. Now, to add to this, the citizens of Lebanon have low purchasing power. Now, what is the reason for that? Well, mainly the high exchange rate. For every dollar, you have to pay 1500 Lebanese pound or Lebanese lira. That is the amount of high exchange rate that is existing there. So if I simply go ahead online and buy a product which is of $10, I'll have to pay 15,000 lira. Now imagine the situation here. If my salary is 15,000 Lebanese pound, then I am facing a problem here of low purchasing power. I cannot buy many goods. Now, to add to this, there are limits on the bank withdrawal. So you cannot withdraw as much as money as you want to draw from the bank. Now we have seen what happened if you put limit on the withdrawal from the bank. That happened at the time of demonetization. So the limit that is being put is $200 is that you can withdraw from the bank per week. Okay, not per day, per week. Okay, so that is again creating problem for citizens. To add to this, there is an inefficient government. Now, why am I calling the government to be inefficient? Because the government is based on sectarian politics. There are 18 sects, which we'll see it in the next part of the video, in Lebanon. And each of this sect is representing their religious community and are working for their religious community and not as a whole for the people of Lebanon, which is creating this inefficient government structure. Also, the country ranks high on corruption perception index. Now, you are imagining what is this? So, to rank how good or bad the country is with respect to corruption, this corruption perception index comes into the picture. So, if your rank is 1, you are least corrupted. But if your rank is 180, you are highly corrupted. And Lebanon ranks 137 on this, which means the state of corruption is again worst in Lebanon. So these are the many problems, starting from basic necessity to employment to debts to purchasing power to bank withdrawal to inefficient government to corruption. These are all the problems that are being faced by citizens of Lebanon. Now what do you do in such situation? Now, to make the situation even more worse, the government imposed tax on the usage of WhatsApp. Yes, on 19th of October 2019, the Lebanese government tried to impose tax on the usage of OTT platform that included WhatsApp. Now, what will you do as a citizen in this case? Now, just like us, the Lebanese citizens are also dependent on the usage of WhatsApp to connect with their loved ones in the foreign country. And the tax on WhatsApp came up to be the major reason for the protest. Now, huge protests were observed in the capital of Lebanon, that is Beirut. Slogans were chanted against the government. Now, not only the protest was against the government, the protest was against the bank as well. The bank which did not allow the citizens of Lebanon to withdraw their money. They burned down the bank with the petrol bomb. And that's when the situation became worse on 19th of October 2019. So the tax on WhatsApp came up to be a reason. Now this was, we know, not the only reason why they were frustrated with the government, but this came up to be one reason why they came onto the street and started protesting against the failed political and economic structure of Lebanon. Now the next video will give you an idea about what is the nature of protest and how did the protest go ahead. Now this video should give you an idea about the reaction of the citizens to the incident.
They should all resign, so we can live and so those young unemployed men can live, instead of becoming robbers and thieves.
So as you can see it, all that the citizens wanted here was the resignation of their Prime Minister and his team. And that is what happened. On 29th of October 2019, exactly 10 days after the protest, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Saad Hariri, resigned. And this is what he said in his resignation speech.
اليوم ما بخفيكم وصلت طريق مسدود وصار لازم نعمل صدمة كبيرة لمواجهة الأزمة.
رئيس الحكومة كانت كتير منيحة، أول شيء كتير منيحة. هذا الشعب بده إياه، هذا هو الشعب اللي بده إياه. هلا كلهم يلحقوه، الحرامية البقاية كلهم.
أول شيء باستقالة الحكومة بدي هن الثوار كخطوة أولى، وبدي هن الشعب اللبناني. بعدين أكيد في خطوات تانية بدنا نقوم.
Now as we can see from all this video, the citizens of Lebanon are protesting against their inefficient political structure. Now why is the political structure of Lebanon so inefficient? Well, this is the reason for that. There are 18 religious sects in Lebanon. Now what is a religious sect? It's a group of people whose religious beliefs differ from a large group of people. We can see it in India as well. Different religious sects, Sikhism, Christianity, Muslims, Hindus, Parsis. Each of the religious sect is having their religious belief which differs from the other group. That are called as religious sects. And there are 18 different religious sects present in Lebanon. As you can see it from this pictures should give you an idea about the different religious sects present there. Shia Muslim, Sunni Muslim, Maronite Christian, Greek Orthodox Christian, Druze, Greek Catholic and others. So these are the different religious sects as you can see it in this diagram. But what is the problem? Specific number of seats are given to each sect in the parliament. So the seats in the parliament are distributed according to your religion. Okay, and that's where the problem comes into the picture. As you can see it here in this table, the seats are being allocated to Maronite Catholic, then there are Eastern Orthodox, then there are again one more type of Catholic, Armenian Orthodox, Armenian Catholic, Protestant, and so these are all the seats that are being given to Christian, and these are all the seats that you can see are being given to Muslim. The ratio of the distribution of the seats was 6:5, and that was before the Taif Agreement. The Taif Agreement is something that happened in the year 1989 after the Civil War was ended. The Civil War ended in the year 1990, and during the period of 1989-1990 is when the Taif Agreement was signed. Okay, prior to that, the seat distribution, as you can see, was in the favor of Christians. So 6:5 was the ratio of seat distribution before that. But after that, there was a 50-50 distribution. The seats, the total number of seats were 128 after this, and the seats were distributed as 64 to Christians and 64 to Muslims. And even in Christians, you have different types. You have Maronite, you have Eastern, you have Armenian, you have Protestant, and so on. So you can see how divided are they. Okay, even in Muslims, they are Shia, Sunni, then Druze, then Alawite, and so on. So that's how the seat distribution always happened in the parliament. Now, to add to this, citizens have a further problem. Citizens, let me put it here. Yes, citizens can only vote for the candidate from the specific sect running in their district. Now, what is the meaning of this? If I am a Christian and the person who is representing my district, who is standing in the election representing my district, is a Muslim, I being a Christian, I cannot vote for him. And that's where the problem. Only Muslim can vote for him. Okay, that's where the problem is. Citizens can only vote for the candidates from specific sect running in their district. So a Christian can only vote for Christian. A Parsi can only vote for Parsi. That's an example if I have to apply it in India. Okay, so that's how divided Lebanon is. And imagine a situation for citizen when it comes to voting for their representatives. Now, to make the matter even more worse, 3 of the highest political office are being reserved for these 3 sects. What is the meaning of this? The Prime Minister has to always be a Sunni Muslim. The Speaker of the House always has to be a Shia. And the President always has to be a Maronite Christian. Because these are the community which represents the major part of Lebanon. This is according to their percentage distribution of population. The Shia and the Sunni, which is 54% of the population. Christians, which are 41% of the population, and Druze, which are 5% of the population. So depending upon their population, I distribute 3 of the highest political office. The Prime Minister always will be a Sunni, Speaker of the House will always be a Shia, and the President will always be a Maronite Christian. Now, to take a decision, a decision needs to be taken onto a certain law. To make a law or to make a bill in the parliament, 2/3 majority is needed to make any decision in the parliament. Imagine a situation where every religious community is thinking of the benefit of their sect. How will the decision be made? Okay, how much difficult it will be to reach at any decision in the parliament because of such a division. As we already know, how are the seats distributed? This 128 seats are distributed on the basis of religious sects, and it is almost impossible to make a decision in such kind of divided parliament structure. Now let us understand and decode the reason as to why has the Lebanon practicing this confessionalism politics where the seats in the parliament are divided according to your religion. And the major reason for this type of politics comes from the geographical location of Lebanon. So where does Lebanon lie in the world? This is India and Mumbai where I am, and let's go to here, to this region, to the Middle East, and we zoom on this. This is where you can see Lebanon and the capital of Beirut, which is here, surrounded by the boundary of Israel, Syria and Jordan. This is your Lebanon. As you can see it from the geographical location, Lebanon is a connecting point between Europe and Middle East, and that's why it's a melting point of many religions here. You always found out travelers traveling from Europe to Middle East and from Middle East to Europe, and that's why you find all the refugee communities from Catholic to Muslims which are residing in Lebanon, and that's why it has to come up with a confessionalist politics system. Owing to this advantage of geographic location, many empires tried to attack Lebanon, and starting with 332 BC, it was Alexander the Great who attacked Lebanon. And after that, it was under the control of Ottoman Empire from 1516 to 1918. That's a good period of time where Lebanon was under the control of Ottoman Empire. After that, at 1920, Lebanon and Syria came under the control of France. So this is when colonialism was at peak. India was under the control of UK, and so was Lebanon and Syria under the control of European power, which was France. Then what happened after that? 1943 is when Lebanon got its independence. There are many independent parties which were formed in Lebanon, and they asked for independence. So India got its independence in 1947, and so did your Lebanon got its independence in 1943. So was an independent republic government that was formed in Lebanon in the year 1943. In 1944, France transfers the power to the Lebanese government, and now the distribution of seat is happening in the ratio of 6:5 in the favor of Christian. Now we have studied this, the distribution of seats before the Taif agreement and after the Taif, right? So this is what it is before the Taif. This is 1944. What is happening right now? The seats are in the total 99 seats are distributed in the ratio of 6:5, such that 54 seats are with the Christians and 45 seats are with Muslims in the favor of Christians. Then in the year 1967, there was an Arab-Israel war. Now Lebanon was very smart enough to keep itself out of this Arab-Israel war. Now you can see it here, this is your Lebanon, this is your Israel, and Lebanon was never involved in this war. But the problem that was created for Lebanon was the aftermath of the war. Now what happened after that? Palestine entered into Lebanon, and they attacked Israel through Lebanon. So this are the locations where Palestine entered. If I were to zoom it here, this is how the map would look like. This is your Lebanon, and you can see it here. This is your Israel, and this is where the Palestine came up and set up their bases, and from this base they started attacking Israel. And this created a Lebanese civil war which went on from 1975 to 1990. Now Israel was reacting to this, but in 1982 Israel launches a full-scale invasion of Lebanon because they wanted to protect themselves from this attack of Palestine, who had made their base in Lebanon. So now in the year 1982 they started attacking this base camp of the terrorists which were from Palestine and located at this location. And with this comes the entry of Hezbollah. Okay, now what is Hezbollah? Now they are further creating problem for Israel. Now Hezbollah is a terrorist organization which is funded by Iran. Now even Hezbollah had set up their camp here in this part of Lebanon, and even they started attacking Israel from here. So Israel is just not facing problem from Palestine, they are also facing problem from Hezbollah. And what is the role of Hezbollah? Well, we'll see it in the next part of the video. Okay, but now Israel is having problems from both of them, and eventually who is suffering from all this? The Lebanese. Okay, and this created a Lebanese war which ended in the year 1990. It was a 15-year-old Lebanese war where they have to suffer the most. Now let us understand the role of Hezbollah in this entire conflict. Now what is Hezbollah? Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that is funded by Iran to support its Shia population in Lebanon. Now what is exactly happening here? So each of this religious sect, which is being seen as a minority in Lebanon, is being supported by one corresponding nation. So Shia population is being supported by Iran. Similarly, the Sunni population is being supported by Saudi Arabia, and the Christian is getting regularly the support from various countries. So that's how each country is trying to influence Lebanon by various means. Now, what is the role of Hezbollah in influencing the population at Lebanon? Now, as we have seen, Hezbollah has entered in the territory of Lebanon in a 15-year-old civil war that existed from 1975 to 1990, and these are all the places that are being occupied by Hezbollah. So if we can see it here, this is the place, that is a region that is being occupied by Hezbollah, this is the region that is being occupied. So they are having a great influence over the territorial region of Lebanon. Not only that, they also have seats in the parliament. Yes, this is the 128 seat structure that we have seen of Lebanon parliament, and if we can see it here, there are seats, 13 seats are there for Hezbollah. They have their own radio station, they have their own television channel, and that is the kind of strong influence that they are having in the population of Lebanon. Okay, and they have also issued an open letter which is revealing about their identity as to who they are and what they actually believe in. So they are the followers of Islam. They want Christian to embrace Islam. They open their hearts to and embrace Islam. They see Israel as a vanguard of United States in their Islamic world. So that's why they are always against Israel. And Palestine, along with the Hezbollah, as we have seen, has occupied various territories in Lebanon, and from there they have attacked at Israel, creating a 15-year-old civil war in Lebanon and destabilizing the entire political structure of Lebanon. Now let us understand a brief political history of Lebanon. So what history do we know till now? Till 1990, the civil war which started in the year 1975 and 1990. We know what led to the civil war. Palestine as well as the Hezbollah group, which entered into the territory of Lebanon and created this political instability. Now let's see the history after 1990. Now even before going to the history after 1990, let's just go 1 year back. That is 1989, a Taif agreement was signed which shifted the previous imbalance of power. So we had seen this distribution of seats earlier. The distribution of seats between Muslims and Christian were 54 and 45, that is in the ratio of 6:5, and the total seats were 99. Now after this Taif agreement, which was signed in the year 1989, there was a 50-50 distribution. So out of the total 128 seats, 64 were given to Christian and 64 were given to Muslims. Okay, this is what happened in the year 1989. Now let's go after 1989, that is after 1990. What happened? Elections were held in the year 1992. Okay, and this was the first democratic election in 20 years. And what happened after that? Rafiq Hariri becomes the prime minister in the year 1992. But he was soon assassinated in the year 2005. 13 years later, he was assassinated by this Hezbollah group. We know the history of Hezbollah. Okay, since he was a Sunni prime minister, the Shia supported Hezbollah group assassinated this prime minister. What happened after that? In 2009, his son Saad Hariri formed his unity government, and we now know that on 29th of October 2019, even Saad Hariri resigned. Okay, so till 29th of October 2019, we know what happened with the history of Lebanon. So with the resignation of Prime Minister Saad Hariri, it created a 3 months of political vacuum. But after 3 months of political vacuum, a new government was formed. And the new Prime Minister was Hassan Diab. Now who is Hassan Diab? Hassan Diab is a technocrat. He is a professor of electronics engineering in American Institute at Beirut. And so did a cabinet of 20 members is being formed. So everything new is being set up with respect to cabinet as well as the prime minister. Now what is special thing about this? 6 women, including the Minister of Defense and the Deputy Prime Ministers, were included in the cabinet, and that is something that is surprising with the Arab world, that women are occupying the place in the cabinet, and that's what marked a historical decision in making this cabinet. The number is a record for Lebanon, with women now holding more than quarter of the cabinet posts. Okay, so a new government is formed and now everything seems to be resolved. But the question now that comes is, are people satisfied with the new government? Did the protest actually stop after the formation of new government? The answer is no. And what is the reason of that? Well, people believe that the ministers were named by the political parties. So the political parties which existed earlier has only named this minister. So basically they are just puppet which will be run by the earlier political parties. Analysts also said that the new government being politically assigned with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group. So some analysts believe that this government is being formed and will be controlled by Hezbollah group. The cabinet includes a fair number of capable technocrats, we all know that, but it does not have any political independence to speak of. And again, this is one of the problems that was seen with this government. What Mr. Hassan Diab, the newly formed Prime Minister of this government, has to say? Hassan Diab dismissed any accusations that the government was made up of one political camp consisting of Hezbollah group. So he denied any of the associations with Hezbollah and insisted that the government is for all of Lebanon. And that is what the people of Lebanon wanted. They wanted a government which is not a sectarian government representing one religion, but the government which is representing the people of Lebanon. That's what he insisted upon. Now this one video will give you a good idea about the protest that happened after the formation of new government, the nature of protest and the reason for protest.
ابدا نحن مش راضيين بهيدي الحكومه، لو شو ما كانوا، لو شو بدهم يعملوا، هيدي تقسيم الحصص، تقسيم الفطيره كرمال لبنان نحن ما بنرضى فيه.
Now we saw how did people react to the formation of new government. But that happened on 21st of January 2020. That was when the government was formed. What's happening actually right now? Now we are into July 2020. What is the situation of Lebanon right now? So let's see it here. This article gives you an idea about what is the situation of Lebanon right now. This article was published on 10th of May 2020. As you can see it here. What is it saying? Lebanon's economic crisis explodes, threatening decades of prosperity. Bad planning, corruption and sudden shock of pandemic wave caused the Lebanon currency to crash and the consumer prices to jump. Hunger looms. Okay, so the economic crisis further becomes bad. Flawed policies and sudden shock waves have thrust Lebanon into worst economic crisis in decades, with its currency collapsing. Now let us understand a reason as to why this actually happened. So there is now a nationwide shortage of dollars in Lebanon. And what is the reason for that? Well, Lebanon itself does not export anything. So they don't earn dollar as such because they don't export much. So what is the source of dollar for Lebanon? That is mainly the large deposits from wealthy investors. So if I'm a wealthy investor, I have a lot of dollars with me, I'll go ahead and deposit in Lebanon's bank. What is like the benefit to me? Well, I'll be earning huge interest from that, and that's what they did with all the depositors. All the depositors who came and deposited dollars, they gave them huge yields. Okay, so if I'm getting a good returns, I will deposit more of dollars in Lebanon's bank, right? That's what the thought process is. That was the source of revenue to Lebanon in the form of dollars. But what is a flaw in this? Well, this was a state-sponsored Ponzi scheme. Yes, what was actually happening is the returns that are being given to me for my dollar that I had given to the bank is nothing but the deposits of the new depositors. So bank is not investing it anywhere and giving the returns to me. They are just taking the deposits from one investor and giving to the other investor, and that's how they are just playing with the money of people. And as the new depositors suspected the policy was unsustainable, they stopped coming. And again, there was a dollar shortage that was experienced by this bank at Lebanon. Okay, if you just want to understand what exactly are this bank doing, so this is your Ponzi pyramid. Okay, so what do they exactly do it here? So I'll take money from any of the investor, and say there are two investors here. Okay, I'll take 1,000 from him and I'll take 1,000 from him as well. Okay, and what will I say to him? I'll give you 2,000 at the end of a month. So I'll give you 2,000 at the end of the month. Where will I get this 2,000 from? I'll take two more investor here. This two investor will give 2,000, and this two investor will again give 2,000. So what do I get it here? 4,000. This is what I'll give it to them. So they are like, okay, I'm getting 2,000 when I give 1,000. It's a good scheme. But now there are again four investors. You had promised them that you will give them double. So this 2,000, you have to give them 4,000, and this 2,000, you have to give them 4,000. So you have to give them 8,000. You will take 8 more investors. You will take 8,000 from them, and so on. You just take money from one investor and give it to the other investor. You take money from new depositors and give it to the old depositor, and that's what the flaw of this scheme was. And when this flaw was recognized by the depositors, they stopped putting money in Lebanon's bank, and that is where Lebanon's bank felt a good shortage of dollar. This shortage of dollar has now hit the individual Lebanese account. Yes, now bank has either limited the dollar withdrawals for individual Lebanese accounts, or they have stopped handling out dollars altogether. So if you want to withdraw dollars from the Lebanese bank, you have a limited withdrawal capacity, or they will not at all give you dollars because of the things which we have discussed earlier. To give you an example, this is an example of Foutok, who has retired after 24 years in Lebanese army with a pension that used to be worth $800. So his pension was $800. With his pension, he was able to buy goods worth $800. But now, with the same pension, he is just able to buy the goods worth $200. Okay, so that's how his pension has reduced in value. Initially, with the Lebanese pound that he was getting, he was able to buy goods worth $800. Now he's able to buy goods worth $200 only, and that's where an individual Lebanese is facing a problem. The pain of the average citizen is clear in its depositors lining up outside banks, often wearing face masks and standing in the sun to see whether they can withdraw any of their own money. Okay, so the situation that we faced during demonetization for a good 2 months, Lebanese are facing this every day. Now, what is it like the international institution has to say in this article with the situation of Lebanon's economic crisis? Now, the World Bank warned in November that the portion of the Lebanese population living in the poverty could increase from 30% to 50% if the government did not act swiftly. And this was said in November. But the coronavirus pandemic, along with the currency crash, made this situation even worse. Now we are into May, and this was predicted in November. And because of pandemic and currency crash, the situation has become even worse. Human rights warned that millions of Lebanese residents were at risk of going hungry during the pandemic lockdown if the government didn't come to their aid. So the pandemic is making the situation even worse at Lebanon. Now the desperation had made countries' protest even more violent. So the protest, which started with the insufficient government, with the resignation of the prime minister, with the formation of new government, and the protest for the formation of new government has become a lot more violent now because of the pandemic situation that the Lebanese citizens are facing right now. Now this crisis has struck a blow at historic institutions. Two hotels that survived the country's 15-year-old civil war have announced that they are shutting their doors. And the president of American University of Beirut, one of Arab's world's top universities, sent a letter to faculty and staff last week to prepare them for perhaps the greatest crisis since the university's foundation in 1866. Now, intellectuals believe that this crisis will prompt a new wave of migration. People will leave Lebanon because of this crisis, and the country will lose its people who are now desperately required to rebuild its economy. So this migration will further make situation worse. Now let's see an article which was published on 13th of June 2020. So after the May article, we come on to the June article. Now what are people saying right now? Lebanese protesters call on governments to resign after this economic crisis. So even this new government, the people of Lebanon wants this government to resign as the currency loses more than 60% of its value. So amid this economic crisis, people in Lebanon wants this new government as well to resign. And this is what the article says. Angry protesters in Lebanon took to the streets in the capital Beirut and the other cities on Saturday, calling for government's resignation as the country sinks deeper into the economic distress. The protest comes after 2 days of rallies spurred by a dramatic collapse of the local currency against the dollar. Some of those rallies degenerated into violence, including attack on the private banks and shops. So history is repeating itself. Now what is people's opinion about the government amid this crisis? People say that government is wearing a mask featuring the Lebanese flag. So they are pretending to be something and they are doing something completely different. What are they saying else? We want a new government. We want stability. We won't be able to live life without begging or without having people to migrate. And these are their expectations from the new government. What is it like the banner that they came up with? There is an alternative. So they want an alternative government to this. And they also blamed the central bank governor and they called him to be protector of all thieves in Lebanon. So they are not only protesting against the government, they are protesting against the bank as well. And this is the situation of the currency. The local currency pegged to the dollar for nearly 30 years has been on a downward trajectory for weeks, losing more than 60% of its value. So the currency lost more than 60% of its value, and that's for this economic crisis. So what is actually government doing right now? The newly formed government doing right now to address this crisis. After an emergency cabinet meeting on Friday to address the crisis, the government announced that the central bank would inject fresh dollars into the market to prop up the Lebanese pound. So what are they doing? They're injecting money into the economy. They're injecting fresh dollars into the economy so that the economy may start running. That's what you basically do with the economy. Basics of economics. You inject money in the economic flow of the country and eventually the economy runs by itself. But many see this as only a temporary relief, correct? Because you are not doing any structural measures. You are just doing a temporary measure so that the currency may be at par with dollar. The dollar shortage coupled with already negative economic growth has crunched Lebanon's middle class and increased poverty. Okay, so poverty is something that is at an alarming pace because of this economic crisis. The heavily indebted government has talks with IMF, International Monetary Funds, and asked IMF for a financial rescue plan. But there is no sign of an imminent deal. Now the big question that comes into our mind after reading this is, why are the International Monetary Fund or international donor community not helping Lebanon in this economic crisis? What is actually the reason for them not jumping into this crisis? Now let's answer the question of why is the international community not helping Lebanon? Well, it is not the case that they had not tried. International donor community and IMF are not ready to help, but this is after an experience. All the past help are being put into the failed projects, and that is their experience with Lebanon. It ranks bad in government decision making, so they don't trust this government to make good decision. 5.4 million to borrow was put into the failed electricity project. So it is the past experiences with Lebanon which is making the international donor community, including IMF, to be susceptible to be able to give money to Lebanon. Not only that, there are policy failures here as well. So the new government is following the policy of the old government only. And what is that policy? That is huge spending on the monopoly of water and telecom. So all that the government do with the money that they get from this international donor is spend it on government monopoly. To give you an idea, 50% of the debt that we have seen at the start of this class is on electricity only, and electricity is a government monopoly, and that's where it's a failed investment. Huge investment is also done in the electricity import, which again turned out to be a failed investment. And this monopoly doesn't allow the other players to enter, which is again creating a problem, because it's then not a perfectly competitive market. And these policy failures and not having trust in Lebanon's government is making the international donor community to ignore Lebanon for the time being, because even if they spend the money into Lebanon, it is not giving them good values or good return for money. So we end this discussion by asking ourselves a simple question as to how does Lebanon solve this crisis? What is the solution to all this? So Lebanon needs structural change in the economy. They need to persuade investors to build new factories that could hire tens and thousands of unemployed and boost its exports. So if exports are being improved, the problem of high exchange rate will be solved, because then you will be having more of dollars. If the factories are being set up here, the problem of unemployment could be solved. And if investor comes here, they will be injecting money into the economy. And as they inject money into the economy, it leads to generating jobs, generating income, and it will boost exports. So all the problem seems to be resolved here. So Lebanon needs to revitalize the economy so that it starts producing and it reflects in its GDP. And also they need to reduce the failed investments on the government monopoly. As we see, 50% of the debts were on electricity, which is a government monopoly. So they need to reduce such failed investments and allow the private players to control the government monopoly. So you can give some of the sectors which are monopoly to the private sector, so that you operate in a perfectly competitive market.